look at some classic Arrows games. My name's Elliot Devine, and I'm joined here by the one and only Scott Lidbury.
Great to be here, and I'm really looking forward to getting our rugby fixed today. We're all in quarantine. We're all hopefully keeping safe and healthy, but we're really missing our rugby. We're missing our MLR, and looking forward to digging into some of these classic Arrows matches. We know there's only been a couple of seasons worth so far, but there's been some really tight matches, so I can't wait to see what we're starting with today.
There has been some great matches, and what we want to do is we want to, if it's just for an hour and a half or so, we want to take you out of your living room and we want to get the fans back in the stands. That's what today's about. So I've got a huge list of guests ready to go here to join us today, and right now we're just warming things up because, you know, people might have things to do while they're in quarantine. Maybe they're in another room. So we've just got some highlights from the 2019 season. You see that man there, Dan Moor.
Dan Moor shooting some arrows. He's done that a few times in his career with the Toronto team.
Dan will be on the show very shortly, our first guest today. We're also lucky enough to be joined by Chris Silverthorne, the head coach of the Toronto Arrows, and Lucas Rumble. So it's going to be a great show. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions. So we want you out there, the fans, to send in your questions via YouTube, Facebook. There'll be chats going on there. As we get a little bit more technically proficient here, we'll be able to put things up on the screen. But you'll be able to ask questions, and our guy on the inside, Brock, is going to send us the questions, and we will ask the players and the coach for you. So don't be shy. Definitely tag Arrows and everything you can, and we'll share everything that you want to share from your living room, from your bedroom, where I obviously am right now. My wife is super happy that I've taken over this room right now. Scott, where are you located?
I'm in my living room. I've kicked my girlfriend out. She's gone for a walk through Hyde Park. Kicked her out kindly, of course, but as you said, I think this is a great opportunity on a Saturday afternoon in April to sort of recreate the Saturday afternoon rugby experience. Whether it's an Arrows game or a local game out of Fletcher's Fields, we know the season will be starting pretty shortly. So I think it's a great opportunity to bring people together, and this is really about the fans, an opportunity for the fans to ask the players questions or the coaches, and we just want to hear from you. So if you've got anything to ask Lucas Rumble or Dan Moor today or the coach, please let us know and we'll ask your questions.
That's right. Now we are going to ask our first guest of the day to come by. And I'm gonna text them now, and we're gonna go across to the Webb brothers, who are live in their home right now. We're gonna switch across to our boys who are there and welcome them to the program. Welcome, James and Stephen. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Now, how are you finding quarantine? You guys are both in high school. Is that right?
Yeah. It's been like hasn't been too fun, but because we're all just at home doing school, and then yeah, that's it.
Now, are you doing school, or are you just like pasting a photo of yourselves in front of the camera and then off doing something else?
We're doing school. Yeah.
I'm sure your parents would be glad to hear that. Now, you've known the team for quite a while. When did you guys first get involved?
Probably as soon as it started, we always followed it because our dad's obviously around it quite a bit, so just always following it. Yeah.
That's great. And you've helped out at the games as well. What sort of things do you guys do down there on game day?
Usually setting up the sponsorship signs around the field, just getting the field ready, getting the locker rooms ready, and yeah.
That's fantastic. And this season obviously saw it was a great season for the Arrows up until this point. Did you catch any the away games, or were you watching from home?
Yeah, watched them all from home. Really enjoyed them.
Wonderful. Now you both play rugby, that's correct? Tell us a little bit about who you play for and your positions as well.
We both play for our local clubs in Toronto. I play for the Saracens and he plays for Toronto City, and I play fly half and he plays 9.
Oh, so you're actually on you play for different clubs?
Yeah, just the way the age groups work.
Right.
You know, we have to play for different clubs, but yeah.
And what are the rules in the backyard when you play? Because when I played, back when I was a bit younger, the rules were kind of tackling. You had to be soft, and you weren't allowed to run anybody into the fence. What are your rules?
I mean, we don't really play too much against each other in the backyard. We like to work together on our skills, so we'll do a bunch of passing together and try to get better together.
And that's why you're actually playing for a club, and I'm hosting a vodcast in my bedroom. Well done, boys. We're going to check back in with you pretty soon. That's the Webb brothers are going to keep an eye on things, and shout out to all your friends from school who are watching. What school are you guys at?
Toronto French School.
Toronto French School. Well, bonjour, everybody. That's that's the extent of what I've got. So thanks for joining us, boys. We'll check back in with you soon. Thank you to the Webb brothers. We're very glad to have them join us here on the show. Now, we are currently just showing some of the 2019 highlights of tries scored at home. We wish we were there.
Doesn't it make you miss Lamport Stadium, Mel? Looking at those sunny days at Lamport Stadium. I know there was a really rainy match last season as well, but wouldn't you love to be out there and enjoying the atmosphere?
The rainy match was one I will never forget. I think it was coming in sideways. The tents were flying about, but you know, this is great to sort of come back and have a quick look at these. So we're Scott. I'm just going to check on our timing here. Looks like we're at 5 minutes past 4. So I'm going to. I think we're going to move into. YouTube's up and running. Everything's happening. 1 second, folks, while I do a little technical stuff here. Scott, can you maybe run us through the team that is, the team that we are fielding today, and tell us a little bit about why we picked this first episode of this first match as the first episode of the Classics?
Well, thanks, Al. Clearly, in the Arrows' short history, there's been a lot of really exciting games. But when you think about Major League Rugby, there's been one big rivalry thus far in its existence, and that's been the Toronto Arrows against the Seattle Seawolves. Now, the game we'll be showing today was round 3 from this year 2020 MLR competition and was played in Seattle at the Starfire Sports Stadium. Now, why are we showing this game? Well, if you think about the first 2 years of Major League Rugby, clearly Seattle were victorious in both years. But there were 3 really great games between the Seawolves and the Arrows last year. The Arrows and the Seawolves split those games during the regular season. And then, unfortunately, the Arrows did go down to the Seawolves in a very competitive game in the semi-finals. And that really set us up for this game in round 3 of the 2020 MLR season. The Arrows on the road, as they are early on in the season, going into Seattle. Seattle had a bit of a tough start to the season, starting 0-2. But the Arrows had started 2-0, and we really wanted revenge for that semi-final game. So we wanted to relive that match. It was a really interesting match with the fans today. It's not so long ago, just a couple of short months ago, but it does feel like a long time with everything else that's been going on. So we wanted to watch that game with the Arrows fans today, maybe a couple of Seawolves fans too, and really talk us through some of the action from that very exciting game.
Fantastic. Well, we hopefully are now heading live on Facebook. All our Facebook people shall be joining us right now. There's it's this little connecting live video, and looks like we are now live on Facebook. So you've missed the first 8 minutes on YouTube, and you're going to want to go back and check that out. Thank you very much for your patience, everybody. This is the Classics, and we thank you very much for joining us today. My name's 𝐓𝐡𝐞, and I'm here with my good friend Scott Lidbury, who is, quite the rugby man. He knows a lot more than I do. He's here to help us introduce some of our guests today. You just missed our first guests, who are the sideline reporters for today, which is the Webb brothers, James and Stephen, live from their living room, but we'll cut back to them shortly. And we're going to get this game underway fairly soon. Today we've got a couple of great guests, including Dan Moor coming up in the first half, and Chris Silverthorne, the head coach, after half time, and then a very special appearance by Lucas Rumble. So with no more further ado, I am going to move us into the pre-ceremony of this match. Scott, if you'll join me here, and just let me know what can you tell me about this Seattle Seawolves team? Just to recap on what you just mentioned there for on YouTube, but our Facebook fans will be able to catch up. Tell us about that rivalry just quickly.
Well, I think the Seawolves are clearly a very successful team in the young history of the MLR. As we said, they won it in their first 2 seasons, but the 2 seasons, there's a very interesting angle here in that the Seawolves actually have more Canadian players than any other team in the MLR except the Arrows. So, and a lot of players from BC and Alberta, as you expect. So there's some really interesting rivalries, I'm sure, in this game. And we'll ask Lucas and Dan about this later in terms of some Ontario players coming up against some Western Canadian players. But I think in terms of some other interesting angles about the Seawolves, I mean, what I find interesting, we'll talk about this later, El, is that the Seawolves mascot is not actually a wolf. It's a killer whale, I believe. So I found that a little strange. But that's just a bit of gentle banter with the Seawolves. But I think coming into this game, the Seawolves did have a few injuries. But regardless, their seawall, which is the name that is apparently colloquially given to their defense, has been pretty successful at holding teams out. So we really wanted to breach that seawall going into this game and see if we could create a few cracks in the seawall. So all set up to be a very competitive game, this one was.
Wonderful analysis there, and now you may be wondering who this man is standing frozen in the middle of your screen. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a good friend of ours and a good friend of the Toronto Arrows. His name right there is Connor Murphy, and I want you all to do me a favor, because if you don't do it now, you'll be doing it at the end of this. You'll be following him on Instagram at Tenor Murphy. Connor Murphy was due to sing the home opener anthem for us, and he has kindly recorded the anthem. So I want to see everybody up and joining us for this moment as we watch the anthem. I'm going to ask some guests of ours. The Connolly family are currently. Here they are. The Connolly family is watching. Arrows! Arrows! I know that they're ready for the anthem, so we're all going to stand up for the anthem, except for me and Scott, who are going to pull our headphones out. But Barry is the Barry. You're the big papa over there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And who have we got here today watching? About to watch the game and the anthems with us.
I've got Patrick here on my left, Charlie, Daniel, Jack, Lorraine, and last but not least, Eileen Connolly.
Oh, well, let's hear it for the Connollys there who've joined us today. Big round of applause. And I am now going to, let's take a look at, looks like Scott's frozen there a little bit. We'll work on that in the meantime. And here's the Canadian anthem. So let's all stand up if you can, and we'll pretend we're at the game.
Our home and native land, true patriot love, in all of us command. With glowing hearts we say we rise, the true North strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Everybody at home now.
O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Connor Murphy, and thank you to the Connolly family for joining us there. And Scott, you're back. We lost you there for a moment. You were frozen just for a tick, but glad to see you back. And what do you say we tuck into this match right now? All right, there we go.
Quite the pyrotechnics display here in Seattle.
We've that's all for you, Connor. So thank you very much for joining us. And Connolly family, we will flick back in with you shortly as
Coming
we get
in
into
at
the
hook
match.
has been, will be a big boost at the line out, and it is 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐂𝐤𝐬𝐬 slotting in at 10.
All right.
And Jeff
So,
Haslett,
Scott, we are
another
joined here
Canadian
today
at
by the
13.
CBS
It's a big
commentators,
change.
which is,
And look for
which
Haslett to
is
be dynamic on the
fantastic.
outside.
They probably didn't know this is happening right now. But, yeah, let's take a look at this match. The lineups here, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐂𝐥𝐚𝐬𝐬𝐬 and Keith, Francis, Chaluni, 𝐓𝐴vega, Deanna, Rumble, Ferguson, Adams, 𝐓𝐡𝐞. I hope I'm saying that right. Lesage.
Probably 𝐓𝐴.
Why I've dug myself in here. Levace Malcolm and Dan Moor, who will be joining us. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to kick into this match fairly soon, and looks like Taylor Adams got the ball there, and he's going to get us a start on this.
What do you make of this referee, El? He's quite a handsome man for a referee.
I think that is part of the admissions test to become a rugby referee. Looks
You don't
good.
see many referees with tattoos, though, I must
You
say.
don't see many refs make pink look that good. So big match here in Seattle. We'll be talking to Dan Moor very soon, and we're going to take a look at the match here. And Scott, this field, this crowd out here in Seattle, pretty large.
Well, I did hear for this game that it was a record crowd for the Seattle Seawolves at Starfire Stadium. It's quite a nice little looking stadium. I believe it holds about 5,000 people. You'll notice to the eastern side of us, at least looking on the camera, that there's a nice little forest there. I'm not sure what happens there. Looks like a bit of a scary walk on the way home from the game, but also a nice beer garden set up at the western end of the ground camera side. And we know we really missed that beer garden from the Arrows games at Lamport Stadium. But look, it was a big crowd.
On that, Scott, the beer garden, I would like to, if you've got a beer in your hand or a soft drink or a can of water, a cheers to the refs and a cheers to a good game. Everybody out there watching right now, thank you for joining us, the first of the classics, as the Seawolves make it up to halfway.
Keep a close eye on 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐂𝐤𝐬𝐬. Played a lot of fly half in his career. It's been a hot minute since he's been in that position. As a penalty goes against the Seawolves.
Now, like we mentioned, we have a great connection to you, the fans. We have our man Brock, who's looking on social media, and he's keeping an eye on all your questions and all your thoughts. So if you have any statements or questions about the game, you can ask them to us. We will happily spread them across the internet for you. Or if you have a question for Dan, Chris, or Lucas when they come by, we will also pass that question on and have them answer that question live for you. So make sure on YouTube and Arrow's Facebook, you get in touch.
Auckland, New Zealand, under 20s for New Zealand back in 2013.
Early line out here for the Arrows here, looking to put some pressure on the Seawolves.
𝐶𝐤𝐚 to the back. As now they maul the ball, looking to push their way, but Seattle up to the task early on. They peel away now. Deanna, what a start to his season. Picked up a try in Austin 2 weeks ago. Should have been 2. Still with the Arrows. 𝐶𝐤𝐚. Now 𝐶𝐤𝐚 takes it within 4 meters of the line. Ferguson to his right. Deanna, they have the advantage here, the Arrows. Early pressure against Seattle. Ferguson, options both sides. Brings the forwards in.
Step, boys, step. We still have advantage.
Slow ball for 𝐶𝐤𝐚. Peels around to the right-hand side.
Be on side.
Adams likes what he sees to the left. They come short to 𝐶𝐤𝐚. Oh, the bowling
𝐶𝐤𝐚,
ball. He gets
Brisbane
close.
boy.
Held up though. No.
I believe.
That's where you were born, wasn't it?
That's right.
Well, I heard that
All right.
shrill whistle. I thought he got it down.
Good to see. Looking forward to last time I actually saw the Arrows, I was lucky enough to go and visit the match that they played in Atlanta, and the boys were out in the parking lot of the hotel playing handball. The Aussie version of handball, if you know what that is. It was great. The boys were really into it, lively spirits, and then really came out on the park and really showed them up there in Atlanta. Great atmosphere down there. Shout out to the Atlanta organising people, all the crew down there. Fantastic game day experience. Really, really good. Now we are going to cut across to our first guest now. Scott, you will know this man as Dan Moor from the Toronto Arrows, the captain. Everybody, cheers at home as we welcome Dan Moor.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us, Dan, and thank you again for that awful video I made earlier in the week.
No, I was happy to. I know my acting skills are not on point. I'm better at playing rugby than acting, that's for sure.
No, they were wonderful. So, yeah, thank you again for joining us. Obviously, this is we decided to kick off this series with a real cracker of a game, and maybe you can walk us through the background of your rivalry with this Seattle team.
Yeah, I mean, I've been missing rugby, I think, as much as anyone. So this so far has been awesome to get this kicked off. I really enjoyed it. This game for us and our team was really special this year. Scott mentioned in the lead up, there's a bit of a rivalry between the two teams. I think it's kind of the Canadian connection. There's a lot of Canadian players on the Seawolves, and obviously we've got a very strong contingent on the Arrows. So there's obviously some good battles, guys that we know well in those games. Last year, split the regular season games, and then unfortunately went down swinging in a hard-fought semifinal out there on the West Coast. This game, I think, is even that much more special for us because Seattle's a special place to play. They got a great facilities and stadium. Their fans are really organized. It's a pretty hostile place to play. Once you start marching into their 22, they're really organized with this sea wall chant. And if you're down there in their 22, all of a sudden you won't be able to hear each other talking, and that communication is key to actually be able to execute on offense. So it does put a bit of pressure on you as a player, and but those are the games and the experiences that we play the game for. So it's awesome.
Dan, talk to us about the seawall, because we heard a lot about this during this game. And do the Arrows have a nickname for their defense? Because it seems maybe a little bit over the top to have a name for your defense. So what are your thoughts on that?
Maybe it's something we need to develop. I know, internally in the team, we talk about building a fortress at home. And, I think that mentality helped us string those 7 home wins in a row last year. But I know we don't have something from the fan perspective, but maybe that's a good question to put out there in the fan universe, Scott. Maybe someone more creative than us can come up with something.
Well, there you go. There's a question for you Arrows fans. If we were to come up with a name for the defense or the defensive line of the Arrows, what would we call it? I think that's a nice challenge for the fan. We'd love to hear some of your ideas today.
Sorry about the echo there. There might have been a bit of echo on Dan, but I'd say more Dan the better. So hopefully we fix that up. Is that a try? No.
I think this spell they actually got us. They got us on the sideline at the last second.
Yes, I think that was into touch, but it was very close. Dan, tell me, is there a video referee in the MLR?
There isn't currently. So the way that they make those calls, or the way that the referee double checks, is with those sideline assistants. But I think something that hopefully the league looks to put in over the next couple of years.
And Dan, maybe talk to us a little more about the preparation for this game, because as you mentioned, there was probably a lot of reasons that you really wanted to do well in this game, given some of the history. But I think you'd played Houston, was it the week before, or at least the round before? What does that sort of game week look like when you're traveling quite a fair distance in terms of travel days and things like that? Talk to the fans a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, one challenge as an athlete is obviously getting your body in the right, the right state to perform and be able to execute to the best of your abilities. When you're flying out to the West Coast, whether it's San Diego or Seattle, for example, it's more challenging. That travel isn't easy on your body. But the previous week we'd been in Vegas and then went straight up to Seattle. So, that helped being able to, reduce the travel and the fatigue on our body. But it's an important consideration, but we also have a really strong team in terms of our strength and conditioning, and our medical around us, making sure that we're getting our bodies in the right position to actually go out and execute through resting the right way, things around travel, nutrition, those kind of small 1%ers really add up on game day in terms of being able to put together a performance.
And Dan, when you look at now that you're at home, like, how does that change? How does your workout change, like your nutrition? How do you make sure you get stay as close as you can to game fit while stuck inside like the rest of us?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit, it's admittedly a little bit more challenging. I mean, we don't have, or at least I personally don't have a full professional gym set up in my basement. I don't think too many of the guys do either, but we have an incredible strength and conditioning team around us, led by Sean Harrison, who's, out of all the professional rugby environments I've been, he's, the best coach I've worked with. He's feeding us programs that we use every day, and we use sort of bands, the weights that you have, and body weight exercises, and then obviously some running and biking for guys who have access to that kind of thing, to try and stay as fit as possible. But, looking at next year, there will be, a good lead up in terms of our preseason. And that's really where there's a lot of hard graft, and we get our bodies in the right fitness to perform at the highest level.
Scott, I heard the commissioner of the NHL, you would know his name.
Gary Bettman.
That was the guy. He said it was going to take the guys in the NHL about 3 weeks to get game fit. Like skating again, obviously there's no... Well, if you're an NHL player and you're skating around your living room, then you've done pretty well for yourself. But would you say you're when this lifts, you'd be looking at the first thing you do is get out there and run and get that cardio back up, everything you can, and in the meantime it's crunches and push-ups inside, Dan?
Yeah, I think pretty much. I mean, for us, last year, if I look back, we really had 8 weeks of preseason. We were training together in December and then January. So, the boys can stay strong, but that actual, rugby fitness in terms of being able to tackle someone, jump back to your feet, get into the play, that's obviously really hard to mimic with any sort of fitness program. So when we get back to it, we'll make sure that we have good runway to be able to go out there and perform at that level.
I could drop my 3-year-old off at your house if you want to practice picking up wild balls. That's not a problem. I could do with like 2 or 3 days break, and my wife Sophia as well. No, that's interesting. Look, and just one more thing on the fitness thing. While we all sit here, and obviously everyone's getting in shape at home, I'm sure we're all. What's the one workout? What's the one activity we could be doing? And don't say burpees. Like, what could we be doing at home to get fit?
Well, I mean, right now, one thing that's amazing in terms of like the community, you see everybody coming together, offering free fitness things. So there's tons of material out there. I mean, I'm a man who likes a press up and likes some sit ups, so I have no problem doing that at home.
That's great.
Couple of comments and questions here from the fans, Dan and Elle. So we'll just go through a couple of those. We had Gene, who also agreed that the Arrows defense could perhaps be called the Fortress. So perhaps that might catch on. We'd love to hear what other people think. Maybe there's some other Arrow-type theme names we can come up with. A couple of other questions here from our fans. So we had a question from Ma. Do you have a strict diet, Dan? I imagine perhaps now it's not as strict as perhaps it is during season.
Yeah, during the season it's really strict. I try to be on top of it, but during the off season or right now, probably a little bit less strict and disciplined with it. I think you need those little times where you can be a bit easier on yourself, so that
a cheat day.
When you want to lock it back down, you can. Yeah, you need the odd cheat day. Exactly.
All right. Yeah,
just
every day's a cheat day right now for me. But yeah, sorry, Scott, go ahead.
No, I was just saying along the lines of diet, and Dan, as we both know at least, my office is actually quite close to Arrows HQ, where I know Dan spends a lot of his time, and Dan and I have been known to bump into each other on our coffee runs during the week. So, Dan, I know I'm struggling a bit with this at the moment. How are you getting your coffee fix right now? Because you seem like a man who enjoys his coffee. How are you taking care of that section of your diet right now?
Well, just staying home and making it, Scott. Thankfully, I live with Jamie McKenzie, one of the guys on the team, and he's actually got a fairly fancy Americano barista type apparatus. So he's been looking after me.
That's amazing. Now we have another question here, is and fairly relatable. Dan, what do you like to do in your downtime? And that question is from Christopher.
Well, firstly, Chris, thanks for sending in a question and watching and jumping on the stream today. I mean, it's all sorts of things. Right now, I'm trying to play a little bit of guitar, trying to get better at guitar. I'm actually also learning Spanish for the to be able to communicate with the Spaniards on our team. They call me the Duolingo gringo because I'm spending a bunch of time on Duolingo trying to learn Spanish. It is a very humbling endeavor, but enjoying it so far.
You could combine both those and just learn flamenco guitar, and they'd be super impressed, I'm sure. How is your Spanish?
That might be the easier path. That's a great idea. It's poor, I would say.
The Duolingo gringo.
Working hard at
it. That's amazing.
Dan, just on some of your Latin teammates, if we want to call them that. I mean, we know that sort of De La Vega and Diana and some of these guys, are they back in, I imagine they're back in South America right now. Do you know how they're doing? Do you talk to them often?
Yeah, I mean, we stay in touch. We have like a team call every Wednesday night. Not everybody makes the call every week, but and try to stay in touch individually with all the guys. Manu and Tony Mires went back home down to Uruguay, and Tommy De La Vega and Leo are actually still up here in Toronto. So, some of them went home, some are staying here. But, the great thing about FaceTime and all these apps and WhatsApp and all that is, the ability to stay in touch through this distancing period.
And you're a local boy, Dan. You started here in, and what was you played for Balmy Beach, is that right?
Yeah, Balmy Beach is my my home club. So a lot of great memories playing down there in the beaches, and Lucas Rumble, who's about to come on later as well. He's also a proud beach alum. So we have great representation on the Arrows. We make sure that the other club guys on the team know it as well.
Yeah, a shout out to all the Balmy Beach crew. I know those guys well. That's great. Dan, we got another great question from you. This is from a different Chris. How about some Arrows workout videos, he says.
I think that's a great idea. Honestly, I think we are working on that behind closed doors, but it's something I think me and some of the other guys will put our nose to the grindstone this week and actually make it happen.
You know what the hardest part about making those videos is that you have to move all those clothes and stuff you've thrown all over your place for the last week, and you got to push that all out of the way. I learnt that from making a few videos here this week. It's tough.
I was actually going to say that one of the best things about this stream is it's been a mechanism to force me to pick up all those stinky clothes and actually make my bed in the back here as well.
Very good. Scott, we got another question there?
Yes, I think we had another one from a fan, and it is from Karen, and she says, "Hey, Captain Dan, what are you reading right now?"
Karen, thanks for the question. Thanks for tuning in for the stream as well. And shout out to James. I know it's his birthday tomorrow, Karen's son. So, thanks for him tuning in as well. I'm reading right now a very dense book called Enlightenment Now. It's actually good timing to read it. It's about human ingenuity and how humans have solved all sorts of various problems that we face, sort of developing. It's a bit dense, but it's an enlightening read.
That's what I want my captain to read. That's for sure. I'm just saying that's the kind of book I want my captain to read. If you said green eggs and ham, Dan, I'd lose all confidence in you. So
I left that one for Lucas, so he can tell you about that in the second half.
So you're learning Spanish, you're reading a book about enlightenment, and you're playing the guitar. You really are a bit of a Renaissance man, Dan. It's not just the hair; it's you really living and breathing it.
But to be clear, Scott, doing none of them well. So I don't know. I wouldn't give me too much credit there, to be honest.
We got another question here for you, Dan. This one is from, let me see. This is from Chris. I'm guessing a follow-up question. Is the guitar, Dan, is the guitar coming to the first post-game party, he says. I think he wants a live performance.
Yeah, it's really putting me on the hot seat. I don't know if I could commit to that just to make sure, save everybody's ears, but I'll keep it in the bedroom for now, I think.
What do you like to play? What's your go-to song to play on the guitar, Dan, that we might know, or the fans might know?
A bit of country. I kind of got Blackbird on lockdown. So it's the Beatles, a couple classics like that. Trying to learn a bit of Clapton, but that's incredibly humbling. So
this is amazing. Is there a significant other in your life, Dan?
No.
Well, if there isn't after this,
I'd have the time for the guitar and all this.
Mate, if there isn't after this, I'll be very surprised. Okay, we got another question here. Dan, what song do you listen to get pumped up before the game? This is from Helenka.
Like I actually don't like to get tied to one song or one tradition. I think it's, as an athlete, it's not helpful to have superstitions or, if you kind of get thrown out of whack in your preparation, I think it can have a mental toll on you. So I like just to kind of go with the flow. I do like some energetic beats on the way to the stadium, but then once I get there, I'll kind of just keep it mellow. But maybe on the way there, Loud Luxury, Canadian sort of electronic duo.
Local boys from
Hamilton. Actually, in the preseason, some of the boys got to see them in Vegas, so it's it's special from a couple different angles.
That's fantastic. Now, Scott, you got another question there, I believe.
So there's a few here, and thank you to the fans for sending all of these in.
Yeah, these are great.
So I think you mentioned before, Dan, that you're sort of sharing accommodation with another player, and there was a question around that from Steve. He says, Dan, during the season, do the boys board together, or does everyone stay at their own places?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mix. Some guys are with their families or significant others in Toronto, but all the guys that, let's say they live on the West Coast or international or from the East Coast, they come in and live together. In my situation, I live with Ben Lesage and Jamie McKenzie. So most guys do live together. I think it's just so much easier to all be on the same sort of training, travel, and eating schedule. It just makes it that much easier. Plus, you can cook with volume, and the amount of the food that my roommates are putting back. It's important to be able to go to Costco and make use of those value size rices and pastas and all that kind of thing.
And you must have picked up some good South American recipes from the other players as well, I'm assuming. Have they changed the way you season your protein at all?
They've cooked for us a couple times. I can't say I've picked up any recipes myself, but they're handy in the kitchen for sure.
We can't have you becoming a chef as well. You'll just be a triple threat. Scott, I got another question here. Is there ever going to be an Arrows Up brew for game days? Question from Andrew. I'm not sure if that's a question you can answer, Dan, but if you do feel like brewing some beer as well, it looks like Andrew would get involved. I think we might be able to speak to a few people about creating a particular Arrows brew for sure. It seems like a good idea. Dan, do you have a favorite type of beer while we're on the subject?
I don't know if I have a particular type. I know I do like it, but if someone wants to start brewing some Arrows Up beer in their bathtub or something, I'd say go for it. Just make sure that it's safe. I don't want anybody doing anything potentially dangerous out there.
Yeah, in this current climate, I'm not sure we should be encouraging people to be.
Don't do that at home. Don't do that at home.
We should note that Arrows HQ is conveniently positioned right near one of the biggest LCBOs in Toronto. So while I'm sure the coaches are listening, then yes, if you do want a craft beer, it's not a bad place to pop into from time to time.
Now we have a question a hilarious question from Ma. Ma, thank you for joining us. Loving all your questions, and everybody else out there on YouTube and Facebook. Send your messages across. Thank you for Brock to getting them to us. Ma asks, who is the highest maintenance person on the team? She's throwing someone under the bus here.
Highest maintenance. To be honest, I think one great thing about our team is we actually have no egos, no real difficult personalities, which I think is why we get on so well. And that culture, I think, is seen in our play in terms of how much we care for each other, and then as a result, play for each other. So to be honest, it is I know lots of athletes kind of say that stuff, but this is the most special locker room I've ever been in. Just a great group of guys, for that very reason.
And in the locker room, usually there's someone who gets the cheer going for the team. Is there a team song that you sing after a win? How do you celebrate a win? And who usually takes the lead on getting everyone pumped up? Is that you, or is that somebody else?
We are actually working on a team song. That's one of the cool things about being a young franchise is being able to bring in those traditions and help control those little bits of culture, which honestly I think is so important. Unfortunately, we'd sort of had early conversations about that sort of win song, but we'll pick it back up next year. After we basically just have a debrief in terms of I'll speak, the coaches will speak, and then we'll fire up the tunes and enjoy each other's company. I think it's really important to celebrate those wins during the season. You put so much effort in during the week, and you go through a physical battering to get those wins. So it's important just to enjoy that moment, enjoy that night together, and I think that actually ends up having more cohesiveness between the team and being able to perform better for the week following.
El, we should, and Dan, we should stop to sort of note the game here that we're watching, and Seattle just went over for a try in the right corner. And Dan, tell us how you were feeling at this point in the game, and maybe what you were saying to the team after this, because you really dominated possession early in this game, and then after this kick a goal, you went down 7-3, which perhaps wasn't a fair reflection of the game to date. What were you sort of thinking and saying to the team at this point in this game?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I think you're right. We put a lot of pressure on them early in the first 10 or 15. We made a mistake exiting our own zone, and all of a sudden the pressure was on us. That set piece there, that midfield scrum right at that left post, sort of 5 meters out, that's probably one of the toughest positions to defend from in all of rugby. So we know if their scrum is able to stay stable and they're able to get that ball out, they're in a really strong position. And we just ran out of defenders, I guess, on the end there. They were able to tuck it into the corner. But one thing that I love from our guys there is we literally made them score it in 2 feet or 2 inches from the edge there. So if you're going to beat us, you're going to beat us. We're going to really make you work for it and try and score in those really tough outside positions.
We should note, though, Dan, that he did kick the goal, so I'm not sure if that strategy worked in this instance.
Actually, you know what? Brock Stoller is a Canadian kid. I've played with him on the national team. Really good guy. He's lights out kicker, to be fair to him. I think he's led the MLR in point scoring the last 2 years as a result of his boot. So he's a tough guy to play against, or they're a tough team to play against because of guys like that. But one thing I should mention is that Sammy Malcolm, as we'll see through this broadcast, the guy's got ice in his veins. He's an unbelievable kicker, and in my mind, he really doesn't miss. So as captain, making some of those calls as to when to go to post or when to kick for points and go for posts, it's pretty nice to have that guy on your team where he's basically automatic for three from anywhere on the pitch.
And Dan, a question as someone who plays on the wing: what is the defensive plan as a winger when it's a sort of one-on-one situation? Are you trying to get them onto the ground, or is it really 90% of the time you're trying to get them off, like out of play?
I mean, the biggest thing you want is a turnover, right? And your best friend in those positions when you're defending on the outside are those sidelines. If you're able to get that opposing player over, you guys get the ball back. So that's the biggest play, but obviously you just want to make a hard contact and get him to ground, and then hopefully be able to get on your feet quick enough and challenge for the ball, get there before his support does. But as much as possible, I'm trying to make impactful plays out there, get turnovers, and get the ball back for us.
Dan, it appears we have some special guests watching this stream right now, and one of them, you may be familiar with him. He goes by the name of Andrew Quatrin. And I believe he is obviously your starting hooker. And he has asked you, who's your favourite roommate you've had on the road, Dan?
Favorite roommate on the road? I really like rooming with Leo. He helps my Leo Levis. He's playing the left wing in this game. He helps my Spanish a lot. But, another great guy, I love Rob Brower. He's the elder statesman in the team. He's got 3 kids. He's got a lot of life experience. just to hear him sort of opine on various topics is something to behold. So he's one of my favorites as well. But Q, thanks for the question. And, I'm glad that he's enjoying it at home here. Shout out to his podcast, the Flat Top Podcast, if you've ever had a chance. He's on there bantering with some of the other players on the team. It's a good listen.
The Flat Top Podcast. All right. Well, get on that. We'll put some links up for sure. That's great, and we encourage all the rest of the players. We know they're out there watching this game to join us and ask your questions for Dan. Dan, when you look at the team, how much did this team change between 2019 and 2020? And obviously for the better, because it was a great start to this season before we hit this crisis.
Yeah, I mean the core of the team was pretty much the same as 2019, but I thought we added some really nice pieces. Taylor Adams, Tommy De La Vega, Manu Diana. I mean, real strong assets that we brought into the fold. Richie Asiata as well. But it was nice to have that core, that continuity. When you have most of your team familiar with playing together, it's allows you to go leaps and bounds in that preseason period, and is massively helpful. And actually, El, there's one thing I thought would be worth sort of sharing about this game as well that kind of made it special. Our strength and conditioning coach, Sean Harrison, trains a guy by the name of Luke Wilson, who's a tight end for the Seattle Seahawks on the West Coast. And Luke was nice enough to give us a tour of the Seattle Seahawks facility on the morning of this game. One thing about these night games, and this was a 7 p.m. West Coast kickoff, it's a lot of day when you wake up, particularly when your body's conditioned for the East Coast. So you got to get out of the hotel. You got to go get some fresh air. Chris Silverthorne, who will speak at half, is big on that, getting the guys away from rugby. You don't want to be sitting in the hotel getting tight. So it was great. We went to the Seahawks facility. Luke showed us, all the amenities, amazing facilities that they have on board. I made sure to pull Bill Webb with us so he knows what he has to pay the bill for in a couple of years' time. But, absolutely phenomenal to see what those guys do, their training facilities. But probably the best part of the tour was, right at the end, we got to sit in a room with Luke, amazing guy, and he just answered a bunch of our questions about, what is it like to play in the NFL? What's his mindset as an athlete? And kind of giving us some insider knowledge on the Seattle Seawolves and their coaching philosophies and playing philosophies. And I thought it was the perfect game day trip to get guys, focused, potentially give them a little bit of inspiration. And Luke was on our sideline all game hollering for us. And I think just sort of his insights into the game and, sharing his experiences was definitely that sort of added edge or mental edge that some of the guys needed going into the game. So that was an awesome experience.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's amazing to have that sort of experience and see how the NFL teams, their training facilities and all that. How big's the gym? Is it about as big as a football field, or?
It's probably half football field, but it was an amazing experience for all of us except for Bill Webb, I think, because we saw the price tag on that's probably $100 million or something. So.
Well, I've heard now that now home workouts are such a big thing, Dan, that maybe there's not a need to have a team gym. You can just all do your workouts at home, and we'll see you on the field on Saturdays. So
I'm gonna shut that down immediately, Scott. Don't take this facility away from me, my man.
Well, that'll be nice. Next time Luke Wilson comes back and visits his family here in Ontario, we'll get him down to a game. I'd say for sure. Now that he's he's become an honorary Arrows man, that'd be fantastic to have him down maybe for half time, something like that. Scott, you know a lot more about the NFL than I do. Apparently, he's a tight end, and that's a position.
Well, yes. For those who may not know, El dropped out of our fantasy football league this last season, but that's another story.
But what did I do in the first season?
I think you fluked your way to winning it somehow, but then you forgot to register for year 2. So, I think Luke was actually interviewed just before the second half of this match, so we might chat some more about him at that point, because he has quite an interesting history. I was reading he was obviously played for the Seahawks and still does, I think, but he was also drafted by the Blue Jays as a baseball player, I believe, and played for the Argos as well in the CFL. So when he was interviewed, though, Dan, he didn't really seem, at least he made it seem like he didn't know really all the rules of rugby. How much were you guys able to teach him during your limited time with him?
We got to teach him the basics. he's got good hands being a tight end in the NFL. The passing, there's probably some room for improvement there for him. We actually got him up we were thinking about getting him up in a sort of fake line out, have some of the boys lifting, but we realized those legs are probably worth millions of dollars. So I think, cooler heads prevailed. Or
maybe he's got he might have the Jennifer Lopez insurance plan on his pins there, but you probably wouldn't want to test that. Now, as other sports go, as a young player, usually there's a couple of options on the horizon. Was there any other sports that were luring you in a direction when you were younger?
Yeah, I mean, I spent some time growing up in Calgary, so I was skiing when I was younger. Played a lot of soccer, basketball. I mean, I'm a Canadian kid. We all played hockey, but towards high school, I started to turn my focus towards rugby, and been in love with it ever since.
And was that a school program
here, fellas?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Here we go.
Go down. Dan, just sorry we talked over the top of your try there, but just talk us through that move and clearly a try there. Talk us through your perspective on that move.
Well, I mean, to be honest, on this one, I was just doing my job, just putting it down there. It's a real privilege to play outside guys like Taylor Adams and Ben Lesage, who can create space and create opportunities. Taylor put Ben through a hole, and Ben was able to give me a ball on the outside. I think it comes back on the replay here in a second, but Ben Lesage, one of our new players this year, Canadian kid, went to the World Cup with Canada, but I think he's one of the real future or bright stars in Canadian rugby. Incredible athlete, and you saw in our season, week in, week out, just getting more game time, really coming on as a player. And I live with him, so I can vouch for him. Fantastic guy off the pitch as well. So he'll be one to watch, I think, in Arrows blue and white for years to come.
Well, we might just get you to talk us through this replay here and really analyze the move in greater detail. And don't sell yourself short, Dan, because I think when I watched this replay, it did look like when that pass came out to you that maybe one of the defenders had got a slight hand to it, which may have caused a bit of a deflection, which made it quite a skillful take from yourself in the end. What do you say to that?
I think there was a slight deflection, whether it was skill to pick it up or maybe I got a little bit blind luck there. I was happy to put that one down. More importantly, for our team to pull ahead there after sustaining that pressure early, and it was nice to get a little bit of gap here on Seattle.
Now, your kicker, Mr. Malcolm here, is it fair to say that he doesn't miss too often? Because in this game, he was perfect. I mean, how does he do it? It's very impressive.
Yeah, he's incredible. I mean, he's dedicated to his craft. So you see him working on it, day in, day out during the week. Like, for the young players out there to get that skillful. I should just say, just walking through that replay, I mean, it was amazing skill by Ben to, get through that tackle and put the ball over the top. You'll see it here. Like, that is a really hard pass to make at pace. So incredible skill. But, back to Sammy, for the young players, it's no surprise how he actually gets good. He's dedicated to it week in, week out. His practice is really purposeful. He's not messing around. He's serious. He doesn't need to be there for hours and hours, but, he'll go there for an hour and be really focused on it. And that's how he gets so good. But Sammy's an amazing guy as well, beyond just his kicking. He definitely would never claim to be the biggest guy on the pitch. I think he's probably 5'9" or 5'10" and 175 pounds. But I always like to say he's got the heart of a lion beating in his chest. He'll tackle anything. He's very courageous in the physical side of the game, and massive benefit to our team. He's an unbelievable player.
All right, I'm going to bring in some guests, a couple of young lads that you probably know here, Dan, and get them to jump in right now. Welcome back, James and Stephen, the Webb brothers. How you doing, boys?
Good. How are you?
Good. Have you got a question for Dan here? You've obviously known him for a couple of years now.
My question was, what's your favorite memory as an Arrows player so far?
I mean, this game, to be honest, for us was big, but probably being able to string 7 wins at home last year, it was really special. And a lot of those wins were, tight last-second wins, beating New York on the drop goal, beating San Diego at the death with a try from our forward pack. Those are all special memories. But the ones that the fans wouldn't know, the stuff that's in the hotel room, on the flights, at practices with my buddies on the team. Those are cherished memories as well.
And Dan, what these both young players now? We got a fly half, and I forgot the other position.
Scrum half.
Scrum half. What do these guys need to know now? What is the golden advice you can give two young players at 16 and 14, Dan?
I mean, I think, guys, at your age, it's all just about enjoying it. And if you're enjoying your rugby, you'll want to practice more. I think a big thing is focusing on skills early. Like, skills are the difference maker as you go up in levels. Just being able to perform skills under pressure is a difference. But I think first and foremost, just getting a love for the game, and just making sure that you're enjoying your rugby. You don't want to be burning out too early, or you won't be able to kick on and achieve whatever aspirations you may have.
And stay in school. Yeah. Now, boys, what are your thoughts on this match so far? Pretty tight half, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to get the momentum now. Sammy's looking pretty good from the boot, and a player to watch for me is also Taylor Adams. Like Dan said, he's looking pretty dangerous right now.
That's
Taylor
amazing.
Adams, as you said, boys, his kicking game is just really impressive, and it's something in that New Zealand water, because some of these Kiwis their kicking is exceptional. So, boys, what's your kicking like out when you're playing in your club rugby? Who would you compare yourself to maybe as a player when you're playing with your teams?
I've looked at Owen Farrell a lot. He plays for England, and I look at his kicking style a lot and try to model myself after that. I don't know about Stephen.
I've been looking at more of Aaron Smith and Faf de Klerk. Two great scrum halves, and just world class players.
Can't get any Aussies in there, like George Gregan or someone like that? Come on.
George Gregan, showing your age, Scotty. Well, look, thanks very much for joining us, boys. Shout out to the Webb brothers there. Thank you for joining us today. And Dan, we got another couple of quick questions for you here before we get up to the halfway mark. Question from Doug. How different was it to have the week in and out for weeks on end, and how did you maintain any type of home life being on the road weeks on end? Yeah, I guess that question summarized is, you guys spend a lot of time away from home. How do you keep things rolling back in Toronto?
I mean, it's sort of a sacrifice you have to make to a certain degree. There's nothing really around it. Being on the road 3-4 days a week for the first 2 months of the season is creates some obstacles, I guess, to that home life. But me personally, I don't have to worry about that too much. But one thing, a massive benefit I think for our team being on the road for those first 2 months of the season, we spend a lot of time in the hotel room, spend a lot of time on flights and traveling together. And as a result, I think we get closer. Those bonds get built, those friendships deepened, and it's, I think, a huge asset for us as we carry throughout the rest of the season. So it's huge for us that at the beginning, just getting together and making sure that we have the culture and the relationships and friendships that'll carry us through that homestand. I do have to say, it is nice when we get home for that homestand. You got a bit more time in the calendar just to relax and don't have to worry about the sort of wear and tear of travel on your body. But I do think it's a massive positive for us early on to get those road games. And obviously, other clubs might view it differently as a big negative, but what's the point in having that negative mindset? We'll turn that into a positive and turn it into a strength for our club.
And
if you're going to... Sorry, Al, go on.
No, go ahead, Scott. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it must be tough being on the road in the US for so long, but let's face it, you get to see some pretty cool places. Las Vegas mustn't be the worst place to play professional sport.
Yeah, to be honest, Vegas isn't really my type of town. I like some of the other places a little bit better, but I think, Scott, you hit the nail on the head there. Getting to travel with sort of 25 of your, like-minded mates and get to go to all these amazing cities across the US. It's an incredible dream and privilege to be able to do that. And then obviously play the game that you love and in front of exciting crowds like we had this night in Seattle. It's absolutely fantastic. It's I absolutely love it.
And got another question here before we're into what do you call, Scott? What do you call the time after it's after 40 minutes? What's that called?
Probably
Overtime?
stoppage time.
Stoppage
but Dan
time
would be the best person to ask.
That's it. I had garbage time in my head for some reason, but I don't know why. I saw the red. I got a question here from Jan. Thank you, Jan, for your question. And everybody else who have questions, YouTube and Facebook, they will come directly to us. Jan asks you, Dan, I understand the Arrows have a fan club that attends every home game. Do you find them a good motivator?
Yeah, of course. I think one of my favorite things about the first season in 2019 was actually getting to know probably 75 or maybe even more of our fans on a first name basis. The Toronto Arrows Supporters Club, they're there in whether it's -2 degrees out or whether it's a nice sunny day. So we really appreciate having their support and them getting behind us. And in that sort of magical home run that we had in 2019. A lot of those games we pulled out at the death, and I think that was because we had an amazing fan base getting behind us and supporting us and pulling us through in those tough moments. It felt like we had a 16th man on the field and were able to pull out those W's. So as much as we can take some credit on the field, massive thank you and credit should go to our fans at home who really help us pull out some of those W's last year.
Now you'll
Thank
see
you to all those. Sorry, Al.
That's all right. We don't have a producer telling us when to talk, so it's just going to happen. We've got Luke Wilson is up there on the screen right now. Mentioned him before from the Seattle Seahawks. Having a chat. Does not strike me as an NFL player at all if you look at him, but I guess once you put all that gear on him, it's rather intimidating. Dan, look, just one last thing I want to ask you before we let you go, and thank you so much for your time today and everybody for all your questions. It's been fantastic. I was lucky enough to spend time with the team this year on a road game, and after the match, the dinner that you have with the other team is the most unique thing I think I've seen in sports. Can you just run us through that post-game dinner that you have against your opposition after every match?
Yeah, I actually think it's one of the really special parts of rugby union and the culture of rugby in general. You spend 80 meters trying to batter each other, and then after you break bread and you have a beer, I like to try and buy beer for the opposite number, and that's sort of the tradition. I think that's one thing that's so special about this sport, and this won't be new to many of the folks that are joining us at home today. Just that culture of camaraderie. You could be competitors on the field, but after we'll all have a laugh. We'll all get on together. So, and part of that tradition as well is obviously sort of giving man of the matches, sort of highlighting, I guess, your opponent's, good performance and exchanging some words about their performance and wishing them best of luck for the rest of the season. So I think it's, compared to all the other sports I've played, it's a unique aspect to rugby union. And I think one of those amazing components of it as well.
Dan, I have one quick question before you go. We're going to have your coach on shortly. I'm sure you're speaking to him, but is there anything you would like us to ask him?
I think it would be interesting to ask him, what did he say in the sheds at the middle of this game? I find it hard to remember those moments because there's, I'm just trying to calm myself down and then focus on that next task. But, it's really important the messages they get into us. And, what they're seeing from the coach's booth, the angle and stuff is a lot different from when we're playing on the field. So those insights in terms of, maybe they're not covering well enough at the back or maybe there's, they're getting tight around the breakdown. So there should be space on outside. Those insights and tips to us are massive. I think I'm pretty sure if I remember this one, Chris was pretty happy with us in the sheds at this halftime. As you mentioned, Taylor Adams' kicking ability off both feet, I should mention, under pressure. With his left foot, he was pinning Seattle in the corner there. So we were able to manage the game well outside of that sort of second 15 minutes of the game, I'd say, where we leaked a try on the outside. But all in all, I think Chris was pretty satisfied with this first half performance.
Well, look, thank you so much for joining us, Dan. And have you got a message for the fans that are out there, a message for everyone who's watching today and have joined us? That'd be great.
Yeah, well, Al, I'd also like to say, thanks to you and Scott for putting this on. This is absolutely fantastic. It's great to see some rugby again. And then, more importantly, thank you so much to the fans for tuning in. And I know, this season didn't necessarily wind down the way that we all wanted it to, but, your messages of support and getting excited for next season are huge. I think the one big positive is in 2021, it'll be bigger and better than ever. So something to look forward to.
That's right. Well, look, Dan, thank you very much for joining us, and Scott, we were very, very lucky to have the captain in our first little episode here. Wouldn't you agree?
Always love speaking to you, Dan. Thanks very much. Look after yourself.
Thank you very much for joining us, Dan. We appreciate that very much, and we are now going to move into halftime, which is going to be very, very special as soon as I figure out what I am doing here. Just one moment. Thank you, Dan, for joining us. And I am going to do our very, very special halftime show. So now's the time. You can go and grab a beer if you haven't already, or grab a drink, grab a snack, grab a pizza, and we're going to enjoy some live music here. Now, essentially, we wanted to try and recreate the game day experience for you at home, with a bit of entertainment, and there's no better entertainer than I know. If you've been to Hemingway's, you will know this young gentleman. His name is Gareth Bush, and he is a regular at Hemingway's on the weekends. I've known him for years. He's a good friend of mine, and he has kindly recorded us some great entertainment here for halftime. We're very, very excited to have him on. Gareth Bush, at Gareth Bush Music. If you like what you see, we'll have... I'll let Gareth take it from here, but that was the first half. Scotty, what did you think of the first half there?
I thought the Arrows deserved to be in front by more. 13-7, they're still in front, but I think there's bigger things to come from in the second half. So I look forward to talking to the head coach shortly to see what he had to say at halftime and checking out the second half. But before that, it's the halftime entertainment. This is your time to shine, Elliot. So let's see what you've got.
Here we go. We've got Gareth Bush, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey guys, this is Gareth Bush. I'm here for the halftime performance. You may recognize me from Hemingway's. I played there on Friday nights. Big shout-outs to Hemingway's for being a sponsor of this game and this performance. I love that place. I can't wait to get back. Shout-outs to all the staff, the management, everybody involved right now. We're all going through this thing together. And in the meantime, I'm going to perform some tunes for you guys. But a strong first half by the Arrows. 13-7 against Seattle. Not a bad first start. I know the boys have another gear, though. They're going to pick it up and run away with this thing in the second half. So looking forward to that. In the meantime, enjoy the tunes. If you have any requests, let me know going forward. But here's a Jack Johnson song to kick us off. I was sitting, waiting, wishing that you believed in a superstition, and maybe you'd see the signs. Lord knows that this world is cruel, but I ain't the Lord. No, I'm just a fool, and in love with somebody, don't make them love you. Must I always be waiting on you? Must I always be playing a fool? I sing your songs, I dance you dance, I give your friends all a chance, and living with them wasn't worth never having you. Or maybe you've been through this before, but it's my first time, so please ignore the next few lines, since they're directed at you. Must I always be waiting on you? Must I always be playing a fool? Keep playing your cards, it's not my scene. Won't this blind night twist? I have no faith to read. Building me up, shooting me down, when I'm already down. Just wait a minute. Just sitting waiting.
put in your position. I put down all my ammunition. I wonder why it's taking me so long. Lord knows that I'm not you, but if I was, I wouldn't be so cruel. Cause waiting on love ain't so easy to do. Must I always be waiting in you? Must I always be playing fool?
Yeah. All right. That was some Jack Johnson for you guys. Again, let me know what you guys want to hear next time going forward for the next show. I can't wait to be a part of this. It's kind of fun. We don't have a lot of sports going on right now, so getting to rewatch these Toronto Arrow games is a lot of fun, and I can't wait to see what happens in this second half against Seattle. The next song is by Kings of Leon. Essentially, I thought I'd just stick to the Hemingway's classics that I usually play on Friday nights. I can't wait to get back there and play another show. And if you want to find my music, it's at Gareth Bush Music. That's on Instagram, Spotify, Facebook, you name it. So feel free to sing along at home.
Lay where you're laying, don't make a sound. I know they're watching, all the commotion. Kitty like play, past people talking, they're talking, you. Your sex is on fire. Darker the alley, break of the day. Head while I'm driving. Soft lips are open, knuckles are pale. Feels like you're dying. You're dying, you. Your sex is on fire. Consume with what's to transpire. Heart is a fever, rattling bones. I could just taste it. It's not forever, it's just a night. It's still the greatest, you. Your sex is on fire.
Feel free to sing with me.
Consumed with what's to transpire. You, your sex is on fire.
Thank you guys. Good luck to the Toronto Arrows in the second half. Thanks again to Hemingways for sponsoring this whole awesome project we've got. And I'll see you next time. My name's Gareth Bush, and take care, everybody.
Thank you very much. Round of applause for Gareth. You can catch him down at Hemingway's normally, and hopefully we'll be catching him again there soon. Hemingway is a great supporter of the Toronto Arrows and all things rugby. Now, Elliot, you've been a bit mysterious this week. It seems like you've been up to something. Is there something you want to share with us before we get back into the second half here?
All right. The goatee is the first facial hair I've had in 37 years of my life. That's what I'm sharing right now. That is the. I've been getting a lot of messages about this. They saw me preparing for the stream and creating some content, and this was the real shocker. So this is just a pandemic beard. It is our third host, and it will be gone the time you see me in person. Just like my dad did when he was younger. He grew a beard and lost a lot of friends. So thank you. I did create this, but also we've got this great idea that we put together. We want our fans out there next week to produce an ad. We want you to produce an ad for one of our small businesses here that's one of our sponsors for the Arrows. We want you to get out there this week. You can get your camera phone, you can put it into iMovie, and we want you to create your own special ad, and we will show it at halftime next week. How good is that, Scott? How good is that?
I might have to create my own.
You'll have to. Now, I thought that, look, I can't ask people to do this without obviously getting in there myself and creating one. So I did it, and I got to say huge props to my wife, Sophia, for her photography work on this. It's just next level.
And for just being your wife in general.
And for putting up with the 3-monitor studio in the bedroom, just an absolute legend. So shout out to her, shout out to my daughter Annabelle for keeping quiet during these Emmy award winning scenes. So I'm going to show you the ad that I made this week, and I'm challenging everyone out there to make an ad. The ad will be for Foundation Physiotherapy, okay? But just to get you excited and get you in the mode, I'm going to show you the one I made this week. Without further ado, here we go.
That's a good ad there, El.
Conked out, didn't it? Oh, there it is. They are open for virtual appointments. You can get in touch with Foundation Physio now, and they are doing virtual appointments where they will help you out online. That is my ad. Can you do better? Can you do better?
Probably you can. I've met Raj and Matt and the guys from Foundation Physio, and I'm not sure if they'll be too pleased with that. But you know what they say, any publicity is good publicity.
Hey.
And I know that physios are doing virtual appointments, and the guys at Foundation have got great therapists there. So check them out. I know we're all feeling our backs and various parts of our bodies at the moment. Well, I am at least.
I did forget to mention the title of that ad was This Quarantine Life. Okay, so, that had a beginning, a middle, and an end, I would say. Anyway, so I want you to join in and make your own ad for Foundation Physiotherapy and Wellness this week. I'll send you the logo. We'll have a logo for you to download and get out there and make something. It's a lot of fun, and we had a great time. So we're going to move this across to the second half of the match.
40 minutes left to play at Starfire.
Here we go.
Toronto looking for revenge for their exit.
And thank you to Gareth for joining us. Now, Scott, I'm going to bring in. It's a bit loud, probably. 1 second. That's probably a little bit better. Now we're going to check in with the Connolly family. Hopefully they're still there. Here we go. I can see them, and let's make sure their microphone is on. And we're checking in with the Connollys. Hey, Connollys, how you doing out there? You doing all right?
Yeah! Great music!
Now you're welcome to make your own ad next week as well. I can offer some production services if you need. But guys, how you enjoying the game?
Fantastic. We're getting on top now, which is great, and it's quite physical. Great try by Dan Moor. Shout out to his mom, who I met in New Orleans at one stage. I believe she's Irish. So good stuff. Good comes from good stock. But we're enjoying it. I'm just trying to herd these lads back to watch it. It's not easy.
Like herding cats. Now, Barry, you have you had a special moment with the Arrows in Ireland, if that's correct.
Well, actually, we were at home for the last few months, and 4 or 5 Arrows, I'm not sure how many. Bill probably had about 20 of them in the house. Who knows? But they were actually staying in our house here in Toronto while we were back in Ireland.
Oh, wow. And how'd they leave it?
Very well. Cleaner than we would leave it, to be honest with you.
There you go. Not only great rugby players, but fantastic Airbnb. Airbnb folks. So, and
neighbors, what they were like, and they said they were incredibly quiet. I was slightly disappointed, to be honest with you.
And Barry, you have a reason to celebrate today, I believe.
Yes, this is we've just come out of self-isolation today after our 14 days coming back from Ireland. So we finally got down to the LCBO and got some moves in. So we're all thrilled.
Doing your part, and your lovely wife Lorraine there. How's it been with the whole family around you for the last couple of weeks?
Oh, it's pretty good. A bit crazy, but I think everyone's the same boat. So yeah, we're trying to be patient with each other.
Yeah, that's great. And kids, are you having fun? Are you back at school? Are you doing that online, or what are you guys up to at the moment?
Online.
We're doing online school.
Yeah?
These guys, they're not good students. They're not like the fans. These guys, they're doing barely 5 minutes a day and moaning about it.
Well, look, Connolly's, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you guys. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
And arrows up. Love it. Thank you, Connolly's, for joining us. Now, very, very lucky to be able to speak with the head coach of the Toronto Arrows, who's joining us now. And please welcome Chris Silverthorne to the program.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Hey,
Hi, guys. How are you? Not bad. How are you?
We're very good, Chris. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, you were obviously there talking to the team at halftime with 13-7 on the scoreboard. Tell us, what did you say in the sheds to the team? Can you share some secrets with everybody watching today on YouTube and Facebook?
I'm a little crushed that Dan didn't remember a word I said, though. That's I'm not sure. Might have to review what I said. I'm not sure if he didn't remember a word, but no, we were quite happy with the performance first half. We had like 58% possession. I think we were in the 65% territory. Things were good. We made a couple ball handling errors in the whole game. It was good. The only thing that we gave up 3 penalties in the first half, and that's how they got their opportunity. If we didn't give up those penalties, they weren't even in our half. So it was fantastic. We looked at some of the things that we were doing well, and one of the things we were doing well was the territory game, and Taylor Adams was kicking the crap out of the ball, which was fantastic, and they weren't exiting well, so that's kind of what we keyed on, is to make sure, let's see if they can exit properly, because they weren't doing it so far. So that was the game plan in the second half.
Chris, it sounds like there's a lot of statistics that you're looking at either during the game or at halftime. Can you maybe just give the fans an insight into sort of how you're receiving those? Have you got someone next to you tracking it constantly, sort of how that process works?
Yeah, our analyst Coco sits right beside me, and so we're kind of watching it, and then I watch a few replays throughout the game. He gives us kind of the penalty count statistics on territory possession, and basically just looking at what the referee is looking at to see if we can kind of correct that behavior. If he's specifically looking at something, let's try to change that behavior.
Just thinking about recruitment, Chris, and clearly there'll be, I'm sure, some recruitment that has to happen given that the MLR won't be starting up until hopefully next year. But you talked about someone like Taylor Adams, for example. I mean, he's from New Zealand, I believe. How are you sort of typically finding and recruiting these players? I imagine you're quite heavily involved in that yourself, are you?
Listen, it's the entire staff is. We're Mark Winokur, the general manager, is sending us videos and resumes kind of every day. His inbox is getting quite full. We have a really good relationships with kind of Australia and New Zealand. It seems to be where we're kind of finding them. And now, and through the South American thing of Uruguay and now Argentina with Tommy, really kind of southern on the southern hemisphere. And we're really kind of looking at the players that are on the verge of making Super Rugby, but not quite there yet. So they're still young, they're eager, they're willing to develop and learn, and that kind of is fitting well into our culture instead of somebody at the other end, at the end of their career, just looking for one last place to play.
And Chris, tell us about your experience before the Arrows. Where did you start? Are you an Ontario native?
I'm an Ontario native. I'm not from the balmy beach, and I'm proud of that. I'm a Lindsay rugby guy, so I'm from a little town about 2 hours northeast of Lindsay.
I love Lindsay.
Northeast of Toronto. So
yeah,
I'm from cottage country.
Cottage country. There you go.
Right. I grew up in cottage country.
And so you grew up there and you played yourself.
I did.
Out there. Right. Fantastic. And what's the scene like there? Is there a large rugby union scene out north of the city?
Yeah, the Lindsay Rugby Club is the kind of the thing to do in the summer. You play hockey in the winter and you play rugby in the summer. It's kind of the big thing. The rugby club is very massive. There's only 3 high schools in Lindsay, and 2 of them are very positive and strong in rugby. So it's a big thing. It's a big culture thing to do, and that's what we did. You played rugby.
Chris, we know that Kingsley Jones, the Canadian coach, was actually in attendance at this particular game that we're watching. As the Arrows coach, do you feel sort of any more pressure when you have that coach there as well? Because we know the Arrows have been very forward about wanting to be a development team and path for the national team. I'm just wondering, does that affect you at all, having him in attendance at a game like this?
It affects me nothing. No, not at all. The players, I'm sure there's a few players maybe that are on the verge of selection that they might be a bit tighter for that game and want to prove themselves, but it affects me none, not at all.
Now, the game itself here, it's sitting at 13-10. What are you thinking at this point in the game? Like, you're now 8 minutes into the second half. Have they followed your directions at this point? Is everything coming to plan?
Listen, we're very happy. We just needed to eliminate the mistakes. We had a couple ball handling errors and just a few counter rucks, actually. Now that we kind of recall it. They blew us off the ball about 3 times in a counter ruck. We just want to make sure we had the right position, the right bodies to the ball, and we produced quick ball. Because when we were doing that, we were hard to stop, and we were going through them. So we were doing a good job. We wanted to play rugby in their end.
Now, I, as a player that I never was, I was known to drop the ball quite a bit. Let's say I'm dropping the ball, 2 or 3 times in the first half. What do you say to me to sort of so I can shake it off? Like, is there some special words that get me more focused?
You know what? I hope your past behavior will predict future behavior, and just going to go back to the basics and just catch the ball and just play it one at a time. Just let the game come to you.
I like that. Elliot, just catch the ball. Like, okay, great.
Catch the damn ball.
Or just get the silent treatment, perhaps.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. You're right.
Oh, that'd be the worst. And now, just one last question for me, and if Scott, if you've had one, you can follow up. Tell us about the relationship that you have with the other coaches and the other teams. Like, have you run into these coaches before? Is there rivalries that go back to the Lindsay Rugby Club? Like, tell us about when you chat to these other coaches, because it's a very specialized job. There's only so many professional coaches in the world, and particularly in this rugby series. So how do you guys get along? Do you chat to each other? Do you discuss things, or is it just like you see them on the day, shake their hand, and move on?
The MLR is a lot different. Before the MLR, the Arrows, which was the Ontario Blues, played in was called the Canadian Rugby. That was a very close group of coaches in the country because there's only so many of us, and we were pretty tight. We would share stuff, resources, and that. Not so much in the MLR. It's more of a job. It's kind of we see each other at the conferences once a year, And obviously on game day, it's more cordial, have a friendly beer, nothing really. It's all about small talk. I wouldn't say it's really about. It's not the same as it was when we were back in Canada. And we kind of shared stuff and really looked to develop the game as a group, as a collective group.
Final question from me, Chris, and clearly we're in a very special time, or special is probably the wrong word, but unique time right now, and we know that the most important thing for everyone is to stay healthy and to stay safe, but we know the Arrows would have been in the heart of their home season right now if the MLR was still underway. I'm just curious, what is your sort of level of interaction like with your players and the other coaches during this time? Because are you just sort of letting them be? Do you have regular check-ins? How do you sort of maintain that engagement with the team during this period of quarantine and isolation?
To be honest with you, we've just finished our last exit interview of the players on Wednesday evening. So we've been talking every night. We would get 3 or 4 players kind of on the phone and do our one-to-ones with their positional coach and myself and the strength conditioning, and just kind of look at a review of the season so far, even though it was only a third of the season, and looking at obviously the future and what it holds and what we're looking for them to do. So we've been talking up to now quite a bit, actually.
What's a typical question that you might get asked if you're a player in an exit interview? Because we know with job interviews, for example, there's always like that question someone sneaks in to sort of throw you. Is there an example that you might use in an exit interview, or is it all very sort of cut and dry?
You know what? We're actually looking for their feedback. How can we improve? It's an organization, and we're a young organization. We're growing. So I think one of the biggest things we take out of it is their feedback. What do they want to see? It's really it's their team. It's all of our team, but they're the ones running the show. They're the ones got to go out and perform. How do we make it better so they can perform and on game day? So that's what we're really looking at, is just what they want to get out of it.
Well, look, Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you're a very, very busy man. It's been a busy week for you, so thank you for taking the time.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
Now, if you were a betting man, would you put some money on the rest of this match, or?
I'm gonna put money that Sammy makes this kick. I'll tell you that. I think anyone he'll make this kick. He make every kick in this game. I promise you.
Oh,
spoilers!
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Sam Malcolm on fire.
He was on fire today for sure. He always is though.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
does he get a special treat after the game, maybe a Kit Kat or something for doing so well?
I'm sure I bought him a beer if he wanted one. For sure.
All right, Chris, thank you very much for joining us.
Cheers,
Chris Silverthorne, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you for joining us. Now, very lucky to invite Lucas Rumble to the show. Lucas, thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I noticed you changed what was on your TV before. It was Call of Duty, and now it's an Arrows logo. It's a professional move, sir.
High tech, you got to keep everything looking proper here. I played with the boys, so we're still getting some good teamwork in, some good team chat across Xbox there and PS4.
So you guys have got a fairly large collection of you that all jump on the Xbox. Is that right?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Most nights you could log on and find one of the boys on, and they're always up for a chat and a game. So it's good. It keeps us in touch.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, Scott. Oh, sorry. I was going to do something cool here. Scott's got a question for you while I try and figure out what I'm doing with this.
Right.
Lucas, thanks very much for your time, and we'll certainly want to talk to you about some of the developments that happened in the second half of this game shortly, but wanted to take a step back for a moment and talk about one of your great achievements. Could you maybe just talk to the fans about what it was like going to Japan for the World Cup in 2019 and just talk about what that experience was like for you as a rugby player?
It was an unbelievable experience. It's, something you dream of kind of when you start playing rugby, something that you don't think will ever be possible. But if you kind of keep chipping away and keep taking opportunities when they come, the opportunity came, and I did well enough to get myself there. And Japan on a whole, like, unbelievable place. The people, the culture, everything was fantastic. I would definitely go back to Japan in a heartbeat if I had the opportunity. They have onsens in a lot of the places we were staying, which if you don't know, they're hot baths and they're very relaxing. So you'd start every day, wake up, go for a hot bath, and kind of finish every day doing the same thing. And then the rugby aspect of it, like how many times are you going to be able to play New Zealand and South Africa back to back like that? We were unfortunate not to get the final game in, but we still got so much like a cool opportunity, something that I hope I'll see again, but I don't know if it'll ever happen again for me.
And from memory, was that last game affected by a typhoon or something like that? I'm trying to remember. What was that about again?
Yeah. So it was a typhoon there in 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐂𝐤𝐬𝐬. We basically got really unlucky with the weather. They usually don't come that hard onto the mainland, and they ended up really devastating the town a little bit there with some flooding, and we ended up having to cancel the game just based off safety and everything like that. But the boys bounded together as a leadership group. We decided we were going to try and do anything we could to help out the people who have been so kind to us during the World Cup, and some of us went down into the local town there and cleaned up the best we could with anything they could give us. Any job, we took it and tried to do our best.
Now that was a huge story. That was a huge Canadian heartwarming story. You guys got out there and helped cleaned. What was the devastation like in these communities where the Canadian team got in there and helped the recovery effort?
And just tons of like flooding and high waters, obviously with the increased amount of rain and the inability for it to drain properly. So you got a lot of pooling of water and a lot of flooding, which, it kind of sucks when it's your house and it's covered in water or mud and everything coming through. So we basically were taking whatever people wanted out of the house and helping to mop up mud or do anything they could ask. So like myself, they brought us into a house and said, we need these things taken out and this scrubbed down, and we jumped right in and helped out where we could.
Amazing.
And talk to us about some of the players that you went over there with as part of the Canadian squad, because we know there are a number of Arrows selected, but there are also a number of Seawolves players who are Canadian and played in that World Cup team. So maybe you could talk about your relationship with some of those Seawolves players who you would have seen again during this game that we're watching.
Yeah, so Phil Mack, who's a coach, actually he's coaching the Seawolves now. He played there last year, was there as a player. It was kind of his last tour. So he was one of the guys there. Jake Ilnicki and Justice Sears-Dewar were also there as props. It's really cool to play with guys that you play against as well at the national level, because when you're playing against them here, you kind of have a little bit more of a rapport with each other, and you can always chuck in a shot here or there, a little bit of a chirp, and it hurts a little more because you know them a little better, but post game they're obviously all right with it. But and then all the other guys there were also involved in the lead-up camps to the World Cup as well, so we got to see a lot of each other over the summer.
And there's a player on the Seawolves, I believe his name's Nakai Penny.
Yes.
You must have some good rivalry with him, I imagine, given you play a similar position.
Yeah, he's a great player, man. He works really hard around the park. He's a really good 7. He's good over the ball, and I got to play with him during the ARC last year. He played back row at the same time I did. I moved over to the 6 and he played on the 7. So it was a really cool experience to then get to have a go against him on the field and kind of, show your worth and try and put your hand up for selection with the national coach being there, right? This is one of those games where you really want to show I'm better than that guy. I can play better than that guy. And it's a good opportunity for both of us.
Now, as we just come back to the game here, the Arrows have come out and started very strong in this second half. Maybe you can walk us through, we just spoke to Chris. What did he tell you in the sheds afterward? And then, take a look at the screen and walk us through this sort of attacking move. Like, what is the plan behind this?
Yeah, so we're what we got told in the shed was kind of to just keep going with the game plan and limit the errors, because rugby's it's a big game of errors, right? You want to capitalize on the opponents and you want to limit how many you have. So for us, we were doing really well. It's on the road, tight game. So that's good. We want to keep it as tight as possible, and the further it goes, because we'll get that energy and keep going through it. But here we were just on top of them, and the idea was to just keep it on them, just keep going forward, keep the ball moving quick, and don't let them recover.
Who just scored a try there? Someone scored. Who was that?
I think it was this ugly guy here. I don't score too many from outside 5 meters now, so that's pretty much been the last probably 4 or 5 I've scored.
There's a couple of interesting things about that try I wanted to ask you about, actually. Is first, you actually, I believe, touched the ball down against the goalpost, and that, according to the rules of rugby, is a try. Is that correct?
Yeah, sometimes you got to work a little bit smarter than you do harder. So I saw the opportunity to hit the post there with the ball. I was actually calling for it, I think, a phase earlier, but it didn't come off. But yeah, if it's there, you got to take it. It's a free try when you're this close, so you might as well take it.
So if you've got really long arms, then you can pretty much score from anywhere.
Exactly. Just touch it quick and you're good to go.
And that was your first try of the season. Does that mean you avoid some sort of team penalty if you I've heard some teams, if you don't score, they make you run around possibly nude? Is that
unfortunately or fortunately, depending who you ask, but we don't have any of that in our team culture. It'd be interesting to see what we would come together and come out with as a punishment for that.
Lucas, another interesting thing that I picked up after watching your try here is that you pointed to your forehead with some kind of post-try ritual or celebration. I'm not sure what to call it. Can you talk us through what that was about?
That was just about using your head more than anything. It was kind of stupid. I hoped it would get on the camera, and it did. So,
isn't it great to watch it again live on the internet?
Oh, it's great. It ages very well.
Scott had a few theories of what it meant. That wasn't it.
It's just using your brain, man. Just using your brain.
Most people do this, Lucas. Most people point at side, but you're like, no. This is a frontal cortex move.
Exactly.
Amazing. Now we just saw a quick cut to the announcer there speaking to Kingsley Jones, and Scott brought this up early. Did you know he was in attendance? Did he come and see the team before you guys hit the field?
Yeah, he spoke to us kind of the morning of the game. He's very, very clear, and he didn't want to do it if it would bug us or anything like that. But for the guys who you wanted to talk to, it wasn't going to be an issue. So we had a word with him, and it's all about kind of keeping the continuity and everyone's goals in mind when we're playing for the Arrows and for the national team. So he's kind of just checking in with us, seeing how we're doing as a team, if Rugby Canada can do anything to help us, if he can do anything to help us, and vice versa. So just keeping that open dialogue going. And he met Seawolves guys as well. So very open dialogue between
That's wonderful. Now, sorry, Scott, go on. You got it.
No, I was just going to say, speaking of dialogue, Lucas, we had a question from a fan here. It's from Karen again, and she says, Lucas, when you're conversing with the referee on the field, what are you typically saying?
It depends on the situation, really. You try and keep in their good books as best as you can, because those 50-50 calls, you want them to kind of maybe think you're a really good guy and give you a break or something like that. But no, you just ask him, just chat with him. Hey, anything we can do a little better? Or hey, on that last one, what did I do wrong? Or you okay with this or that? Just keep an open dialogue, nice and friendly, nice and light, just so you can make the game flow as best as possible, I think.
Now, there's a lot of respect between the players and the referees in the game of rugby union. And where does it's a fantastic thing in some sports. You see players, losing it, flipping their lid and at referees, and it's not the most sportsmanlike thing. How is that respect instilled? Is that, I assume it's from a very early age with your, Barmy Beach, I'm guessing, in the juniors and that. Like, how do they make sure that the players are speaking to the refs in the most respectful way?
Yeah, I think it's just ingrained in the culture of rugby. To respect the ref, respect your opponent, respect everyone. Because it's a tough game, it's a hard game, it's very physical, and if you throw that respect out, it turns very ugly very fast. And I think rugby itself and the beach and all these clubs are very good at bringing in that culture early on and getting a good understanding and grasp that, hey, swearing at a ref or yelling at a ref, it's not acceptable. It's not something you should be doing.
So that's a great tip for the young players. And then, and just speaking of the young players and the juniors, you're a Barmy Beach player, and you followed in the footsteps in a few years behind Dan Moor. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, Dan played for the Beach. He also played for Queen's University and captained Queen's University, and I soon followed him after that and played at Queen's and also captained Queen's. So I've kind of been trailing behind him a little bit.
Oh, that's fantastic. And what were you studying at Queen's, if I can ask?
Phys ed, physical education.
Fantastic. Reminds me of Mr. Langridge, me and Scott's favourite PE teacher back in the day. Shout out to Langridge if you're still out there.
We had a question, Lucas, just back to what we were talking about earlier about some of the ways that you spend your downtime, particularly during this period. And you mentioned you play a bit of Call of Duty, I imagine, on PS4, Xbox, or something like that. And we had a question from one of our fans, Christopher, who said, Lucas, who is the best gamer on the Arrows?
I think that's a tough question to answer. I think it depends on the game that you're playing. I think it varies from sports games to, like the first-person shooters to role-playing games to whatever you're playing. But for what the boys are all playing right now, which is Call of Duty, I'd have to give it out to Mitch Richardson. He has played some semi-professional, so he's got a little bit of an edge up on him. He's sort of a dual-sport athlete.
And who is the worst, Lucas?
Ooh, the worst. At Call of Duty, I'm going to have to give it to... Oh, that's a tough one. I'm going to have to give it to... I'll give it to Ferg, because he keeps saying... Andrew Ferguson. He keeps saying he's going to get it and log on, but I haven't seen him, so I'm going to have to throw him to the bottom of the table since he won't step up to the plate.
Well, you have the right of reply, Ferg. You can hit us up on the messages if you got something to say about that, or... maybe just he's got bad internet. Who knows? Now, Lucas, Sam Malcolm is having quite the game here. What does it mean as a player to have your kicker just go off?
Oh, it's so good as a decision maker out there when you know that your kicker can hit basically anything. It's a great feeling. It just takes the pressure off you from basically, oh, should I have put that to the post because we missed, or should I put it to the corner? And with where we're at in the game right now, I don't know if anyone's noticed, but they've been really struggling with how they restart. So we've basically decided on the field here that Sam's kicking really well, so we'll take points wherever we can and just keep ticking away. And their restarts they've been struggling with, so they're either giving us a nice easy one where we recover well, kick and put pressure on them, or they've been putting it straight out, and our scrum was going really well as well, so we could get a pen off that scrum. And then from there, kick again, rinse and repeat. So we got into a really good rhythm here. This one, obviously, they did really well, but and it was, we got into a good rhythm of basically taking points, exiting well, and then going from there.
Seattle had a couple of their, I think, fly halves, first choice fly halves were injured for this game. So do you think that impacted maybe their kicking game a little bit?
I think it was just an off night for them, to be honest. This is their home, and you really do usually expect your kicker to be switched on, especially at home. This is where he trains and this is where he practices. So for him to kind of be kicking this poorly, it was a really good surprise for us.
El, I think we've got a couple more questions from the fans here if you want to fire them off to Lucas.
I'm intrigued by number 20's hair. Look at that. It is dope.
That is a great hairdo.
Sorry. Yes, okay. So let me take a look here at the questions. Is Is there a difference? This question is from Christopher. Thank you, Christopher, and we welcome everybody to send through your questions. I'd say we got about 15 minutes left in the broadcast, so hit us up with some more questions for Lucas, and one of these comes from Christopher. Is there a difference between how you would talk with a referee in the MLR and how you would talk with a referee at the Rugby World Cup?
I don't think there should be. I might be on more of a familiar term with some of the MLR refs than I would be at the World Cup. But no, I think you want to talk to each ref in a similar fashion, very respectful. Some refs do like a little bit more chat from you. Some don't like to be talked to at all. So I guess depending on the ref, you have to adjust your approach.
And Ross asks, how do you like playing on artificial turf compared to grass?
It's a tough one. A good grass pitch is really forgiving and definitely easier on your joints. But artificial seems to be the way a lot of teams, a lot of venues are going. And the right turf isn't so bad. You can get by on it, and it's a little bit forgiving. But when you play on some of them, you really know what you're up to, and you really feel it the next day. All the times you've hit the ground and got back up. So
it's great. Now we've got. I'll take another question here from Barry. Who, Lucas, is the best player you've ever played against? It's a pretty broad question, that one.
Played against, that is. I'm gonna have to think about that one for a second. That is a tough question.
That is a tough one.
Just coming off.
Or maybe a player you look up to. A player you look up to, maybe from the international game might be easier to.
You know, I think I'm gonna have to go. I think I'm gonna have to go with Kieran Reid there. Against the All Blacks, it was just, number one, you're playing the All Blacks, and number two, you're playing someone who's sort of in your position and someone who you've watched growing up and that aspect. So to play against that guy, to tackle that guy, to be hit by that guy, it's kind of a really cool experience. So I'll go with that one.
Seawolves with a bit of a break here.
Some great work from the boys there to scramble back, though. You know, that just shows the effort of the boys. They work hard. They don't give up on a play, and it pays off. So.
And what else are you thinking at this point of the game here, Lucas? Because we know we only have about 10 minutes to go. The result has pretty much been wrapped up, albeit you guys, I'm sure, are still playing really hard. I mean, is there sort of different tactics that you're looking at this point? Are you thinking about a bonus point or anything like that? Like, what's going through your head as a flanker?
Yeah, as a flanker, I'm just thinking about doing my job, working hard, getting as involved as I possibly can. As a person in a decision-making role, you're thinking about that bonus point, thinking about shaping the scoreboard, what you want to do if you get a penalty here or there. And I think me and Dan were on the same page right now of kind of, can we get that bonus point? Can we push for these tries? Yeah. So that's what was going through my mind at this point, if I can remember correctly.
Is there maybe any, like, a little bit of trash talk with some of these Canadians on the other team, just letting them know that maybe they're playing for the wrong team and they should come and play for the only Canadian MLR team?
I think there was earlier on. I think the boys are a little bit tired right now. There's always some trash talk coming out of Cole Keith, our big tight head there, and he loves having a go at, there he is, getting stretched out, but he loves having a go at the opposition front row, so I don't think I heard him be quiet all game.
Now, we got another question from Barry. Who is Dan Moor's hairdresser?
I don't know. He won't share that information with me for some odd reason. I think he doesn't like anyone looking as good as him. So if anyone can pry it out of him, please let me know.
Could be Joe Exotic. He's got some... Got a great mane on him there, Mr. Moore. All respect.
He does.
I'm gonna bring in our sideline reporters for the day. The boys have been watching the match from the couch there, and James and Stephen, also known as the Webb brothers. You would know these young lads, wouldn't you, there, Lucas?
Of course. How are you, boys?
Good.
Guys, how are you enjoying the match at the moment?
Oh, it's a great match. We're playing really well. In all aspects of the game, where we've scored some tries, we're kicking well, and we're defending quite well too.
And next time you score a try, are we going to see you point at your forehead as well? Is that the plan?
Maybe we'll see.
Now, have you got a question for Lucas?
Yeah. Lucas, what was your pathway to the Arrows? So could you tell us about that?
Yeah, my pathway to the Arrows was basically played club rugby in Toronto. So I played for the Balmy Beach, played provincial junior blues stuff, went off to university, played there at Queen's University in the OUA, played some age grade representative stuff for the national team. And then also started getting into the senior blues, so the Ontario Blues men's side. And if you don't know the history of the Arrows, it came out of the senior blues. A lot of the management, a lot of the players transitioned from that team there. So that's where the connection was. And as soon as the opportunity came up that there was going to be this professional side in Toronto, where I'm from, I jumped at the opportunity. I was out west training with the national team, doing the karting program, training with a bunch of the boys, just working hard, playing when we could. And when we heard about this opportunity coming up, it was a no-brainer for me. So yeah, just through basically the provincial and club systems in Ontario is how I got into this.
And any training tips for the Webb brothers here, who I no doubt will see in Arrows shirts in the near future? Any training tips for these young players?
Different positionally, I think a little bit, so I won't tell them how to kick the ball or pass the ball. But I think what I will say, which is kind of relevant to any position, is just always have an open mind about how to do things and always be willing to learn a new way how to do something. Whether it's a tackle, pass, kick, whatever, always be open to learning something new. You never know when it's going to come in handy.
And be nice to the ref all the time. That's what
always.
we picked up before. Now, Webb brothers, thank you, James and Stephen, for joining us today. Who's been your standout players before we say goodbye? Who's really knocked it out of the park for you guys?
I think for me, it's got to be Sam Malcolm. As a kicker myself, going like 8 for 8, I think he is now, is kind of special, and it's really impressive, and I'm sure he's worked hard at it, and it's very rewarding to get a win in that kind of kicking percentage too.
And Stephen, who did you think really did well today?
Like James said, I thought Sam Malcolm, going 8 for 8, something you don't see very often, and it's quite impressive. So.
Well, thanks very much for joining us today, and I would have had Sam Malcolm join the show, except it's some ridiculous time back in New Zealand right now. So we will pass on those messages. Thanks very much, boys, for joining us today. We appreciate it, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Lucas, we're still with you for the last few minutes of this match. Now, we asked the same questions. We asked some questions to Dan before, and these are starting to get, I guess, a little bit personal. Everybody's pretty hooked up on hair, and now you've entered the conversation, obviously. Is having Colleen Rumble? Who's that? Is that your mum?
That's my mom. Yeah. So it's probably going to be something about cut your hair or get a haircut
she says
something along those lines.
Maybe we take this question to the executive team, but is having a long hair a requirement to becoming an Arrow?
It's not. It's definitely not a requirement, but I think it's a good haircut doesn't have to be long. Look at Andrew 𝐓𝐡𝐞. He's got just a nice mullet. It's definitely appreciated among the organization.
Yeah, once you get that deal with Head and Shoulders, this team's going to be sorted. We got another question. This one's from Joanne. Lucas, if I were to compliment you and say, when I watch you play, you remind me of blank, who should that player be? It's like a dating show question. Heads up.
You're gonna compliment me.
I
gotta think about that.
What player? In current days or in the past, would you, I guess, love to be positioned against?
I'll do a throwback for all those Ontario Blues fans and a Queen's guy, Alistair Clark. He's a hardworking back row. Not too many people know him, but he's really hardworking, really good player, and was lucky enough to play with him for a bit. So.
Well, that's great. Shout out to Alistair. That's a lovely question, Joanne. If anybody else has any questions for Lucas, we have a few minutes left before the end of the match. And Scott, at the end of the day, it was looking super tight at halftime, and now we are at 32-10. What do you put that down to?
Well, I think the Arrows really dominated possession in this game and probably didn't get their full rewards for that in the first half, but they started to see some of that in the second half. Those penalties were converted every time, and I think you'll find there's a bit of late action in this game too, despite there only being a few minutes to go. So keep an eye out for that. But I think the Arrows, and Lucas can probably speak more to this, must have been really happy with his performance in the end to sort of come back and avenge the loss, so to speak, from the year before in the semi-finals. Must have been a good feeling, Lucas, going 3-0 into the next game of the 2020 season.
Oh, it was fantastic. I was really, really happy with how the boys played and how I played. You know, we came in here with a goal, and that was a win, and we accomplished that. And we did it in a really good fashion as well. We played, I think, one of the better games I've seen the team play. It was composed. It was well executed. It was lacking in mistakes as well, which is good. And it wasn't perfect, which also is something you like to see because there's something to build on and something to grow towards.
Busby said he's got the ball down. Let's see.
I think this was a try, wasn't it, to the Seawolves late?
I can't remember if he got this one down or not. I'm not too sure, to be honest.
If only I'd watched this game like 9 times this week, maybe I... No, it's no try. Yeah, no try. I know that move from anywhere. Saw it at the nightclubs a lot. No dancing. Not going to happen. Get out of here. Don't want to talk to you. Yeah, Seawolves. Yeah, like, how are you feeling? You're getting close to the end of the game here. You've obviously put it in pretty hard. How's the body feeling at this point of the match? Like, is it all adrenaline, or can you actually start to feel like you're sucking air for a bit?
You kind of feel like you're sucking air a lot throughout the game. It's your ability to be able to calm down, relax, catch your breath, and go at it again, because you do so much work in the off season in the gym, training your body to go for longer than 80 minutes. So if you can try and remain calm and catch your breath and take these small breaks to recover, then you'll be fine going into the 80 minutes.
Now, are you in this scrum?
Yeah, I am.
Whereabouts are you located in there? Oh,
I'm on the right side there.
Sorry.
Right there. So on this one, we had a little bit of a miscommunication here, getting the ball in, and had some subs come on in the front row. So our scrum that was pretty dominant throughout the game kind of we had a mental lapse, and there's an area you get punished for, right? And Seattle's a good team, so they're going to take advantage of that right away.
The definition of a consolation try right there.
Mm-hmm.
That is definitely the most unique part of a rugby match, is these massive, massive scrums. When you're in there, when you set that scrum, and excuse my ignorance here, but your ear is next to the opposition guy's ear. Like, you're locked in.
Like, the front row, yeah. The front row are really close. They're like this close now, and you're really intimate with the other team. So
how that is just amazing, and they deliberately tape up their ears for that reason, because I imagine you're going to get some cauliflowers out of that one, right?
Yeah, a good scrum, your ears will be really feeling the pressure from your own team, even if you're in the second row. So, yeah, if you're feeling that in your ears, you're feeling that tight pressure, it's usually a good thing.
Is there any people talking in that scrum, or just generally grunting?
No, there's some good chat. The back row, so the position I play, usually tries to chat up the front row boys, the type 5 guys, and just try and give them that extra energy, like they're under some big weight at the gym or doing something really heavy that they need someone yelling at them, telling them to work harder. So,
Lucas, we have a very important question here to ask you from one of the biggest Arrows fans of all before you go. By the name of Bill Webb. I understand he's a very passionate Arrows fan, and his question is to you, Lucas, how was the morning party with Luke Wilson post this match?
So from what I have, my girlfriend actually drove down from Vancouver to see the game. So I actually did not go out with the boys after. I had a beer with them at the post match, one at the hotel, and then hung out with the girlfriend there. So I was not privy to what was going on that night, but I did hear it was. They tore up Seattle, and yeah, that's all of the information I got out of the boys.
Did they party with Fraser Crane or Sean Kemp? Any of those?
I don't think so. I don't think so. No? And if they were there, I don't know.
They wouldn't admit it if they were anyway.
Exactly.
Your girlfriend.
You should just watch this replay, El, from Dan Moor scored a late try here after a mistake from the left winger of the Seawolves. So
wow.
Dan, he capitalised and picked up his second try of the game. So kudos to you, Dan. I know you're watching.
And your girlfriend will be watching now, I hope, as well, Lucas.
She is, yeah. She's actually
you can mention her name if you want. Give her a shout
Angie.
out.
It's Angie. Shout out to Angie. She's actually downstairs right now. We're
lovely.
We're quarantining together, so.
Great. Who does the cooking?
I do a lot of the cooking.
That's good.
She's a physiotherapist, so she keeps me together, and I cook the meals. So.
Did she see my physiotherapy ad before? Because I can make one for her. I can make one for her too if she wants.
I'm sure she's seen it, and I'm sure she'll be phoning you right after this to get it done.
All right, I'm out of here. Thanks, guys. Yeah, that's great. So this is garbage time, right, Scotty?
Well, I think it's game over at this point.
There we go. That was it. Well, congratulations. Arrows up, everybody. A big win. That was fantastic. We're very lucky to have you join us on this first episode, Lucas. So thank you very, very much. We wish you the best in this period of time while everybody's stuck inside. And any last messages for the fans out there?
Thanks for having me, and to all the fans, thanks for watching. I'm sure we'll be back on the field soon, providing more games like this, more exciting stuff. So,
well, thank you from myself and from Scott. Thanks very much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and maybe one day we'll run into you on Call of Duty, and you can take us to school there.
For sure. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks, Lucas.
Thanks very much, Lucas. Lucas Rumble, everyone, and that concludes our first episode of the Classics. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks to everyone who has connected with us on YouTube and on Facebook Live. We love all your questions, and we're going to do this again soon, probably next week. So yeah, thank you for joining us. And Scott, any last thoughts about this game that we're just wrapping up?
No, I mean, I think it was just really great to get the inside of some of the players and the coach involved in this game, and clearly a really impressive performance for the Arrows. And I think we're looking forward to dipping into the archive and maybe looking at some of the games from last year in 2019, because we know there was some really exciting finishes at Lamport Stadium. So it'd be nice to get the aesthetic of Lamport Stadium again and get back there. So hopefully we can cover off one of those matches soon on the Classics and keep all the rugby fans engaged, because we know we're all struggling to get our sports fix and rugby fix, particularly right now. So this has been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it, and it's been good. Thanks to all the fans for their contributions.
Yes, absolutely. And thanks very much, everybody, for joining us. I'm going to leave you with this still image of Sam Malcolm, and if you actually leave your TV on night, it might burn into the screen. Hero of the game there, 9 out of 9. Thank you to all our guests. Thank you to Bill and the Arrows and Mark and Brock and everybody who's helped put this together. We hope you've enjoyed it very much, and we hope everybody stays safe, and the Classics will be back with you soon. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, guys.